Hungarian Folk Tales. The Wolf's Joke. Once upon a time, there lived a man called Uncle George Fox. This Uncle George Fox had a horse, a sheep, and a pig. But he did not give them anything to eat all winter. They were so skinny by springtime that their bones were sticking out. He ushered them through the gate and said, "Off you go, you'll make good food for wolves, and why didn't you grow fat in wintertime?" But how could they if he didn't feed them? This was overheard by a wolf. When the horse walked past him, the wolf said, "Stop right now and let me eat you. That's what your owner said." "You may eat me if you will, but can't you see I'm all skin and bone? What is it that you want to eat on me? If you let me go on my way, I'll grow fat upon the hillside during the summer, and then you'll have a real feast on me." Well, the wolf let the horse go, and off it went. Then the pig came. The wolf said, "Stop right now and let me eat you. That's what your owner said. What is it that you want to eat on me? I'm nothing but skin and bones. If you let me go, I'll grow fat upon the hillside and return with 6 piglets. That will make a real feast for you." The wolf let the pig go too, and the pig went off. Then the sheep came. The wolf said, "Stop right now and let me eat you. That's what your owner said. What is it that you want to eat on me? I'm nothing but skin and bones. If you let me go, I'll grow fat upon the hillside and make a real feast for you when I return." The wolf let it go too and did nothing all summer but wait for the 3 animals to return as they said they would. He lounged about, moving from bush to bush all summer. Autumn came, and one day he saw the pig trot along with 6 piglets. 6 lovely piglets. The wolf saw them from under a bush. He rejoiced at the thought of the feast he was about to have. He emerged from under the bush and went to greet them. "Jolly good you didn't deceive me. I've been looking forward to eating you all this time, and now I'll have my feast." Then the pig said, "If I had meant to deceive you, I wouldn't have come this way, but there's one small problem." "What is it?" "There was no one up on the hillside, and so the piglets haven't been christened yet. They ought to be christened first because it's not good to eat them like this." "Where can they be christened?" "Here in the village. The priest will do it." "Oh, all right then. Take them to the priest, have them christened, and bring them back." The pig set off with the piglets in tow. Then the pig turned back and said to the wolf, "Come here, let me whisper in your ear what the name of each one will be. You'd better know." The wolf did as bid, holding its ear close to the pig's mouth. The pig was in high spirits, grabbed the wolf's ear and began to tug away at it. The 6 piglets followed suit and almost tore the wolf to pieces. He could hardly manage to get away. They then went off and the sheep came. "I hope you won't deceive me," the pig did. "If I had wanted to deceive you, I wouldn't have come this way." "Stop then and let me eat you. At least you'll make a good feast for me." "You may eat me if you will, but there's a slight problem." "What is it?" "You know something. If you begin to chew me, it will hurt me, but it will also give you a toothache. Stand in that hole, hold your mouth wide open so I can hop into it, and you can just swallow me." The wolf stood in the hole and opened his mouth. The sheep prepared itself, took a nice long run, and hit the wolf so hard that it somersaulted like a ball. Then the sheep leapt over it and ran off. Then came the horse. The wolf stood in front of it and said, "At least you had better not deceive me. 2 animals have already done so." "If I had wanted to deceive you, I wouldn't have come this way." "All right, stop then and let me eat you." "You may eat me if you will, but there's a tiny problem." "What is it?" "A maiden is getting married in the next village, and I've been asked to take the bride around. When that's over, I'll come here, and you can eat me." "Well, I wouldn't mind seeing that for myself. I mean, how you take the bride around. Come and see for yourself. How can I? Hop on my back. So the wolf sat on the horse's back and the horse took it into town. A man in the village was known by the name of Uncle Andrew Duncan. In summertime, there were always men playing cards in his yard. They were playing cards as usual when the horse passed in front of the gate with the wolf on his back. The people saw the wolf on the back of the horse and began to shout, "Look there, a wolf on the back of a horse! Look there, a wolf on the back of a horse!" Each one of them reached for a stick or an axe. The horse slowed down so that the people could catch up with it. This they did, and the poor wolf had a hard job trying to get away without being battered to death. There was a man in the village called Uncle Pete Kalan. He was gathering wood in the forest when he saw the wolf approaching. So Uncle Pete Kalan swiftly hid behind a big tree so the wolf wouldn't see him. The wolf happened to sit down under that very tree, keeping his eye on the village in the distance. Then he began to say to himself, "It serves me right. I was so foolish. I wish someone would hit me right now." Uncle Pete Kalan hit him so hard with the axe that the wolf was almost knocked dead. "Heavens," the wolf said. "It was only meant to be a joke." Hungarian Folk Tales. Cinderella. Once upon a time, there lived a poor man, and he had a daughter. Next door there lived a widow who had 2 daughters. The widow wanted the man to marry her, so she sent word to him that if he married her, she would treat his daughter like her own. The poor man thought very hard for a long time and finally made up his mind to marry the widow. The stepmother always treated her stepdaughter like dirt and never went out of her way to cause her sorrow and pain. When Sunday came, the widow and her 2 daughters prepared to go to church. The stepmother said to Cinderella, "Here, while we're away at church, pick out the peas from the ashes, cook them, and serve them." The stepmother and her 2 daughters went off to church, and Cinderella was left behind. And she was about to begin to pick the peas out of the ashes when a flock of doves flew in through the window. They dropped 3 nuts and set about separating the peas from the ashes. The 3 nuts were sent by Cinderella's mother. While the doves were picking out the peas, God descended and ordered the girl to go to church, but to leave when the priest raised the sacraments. Cinderella donned the silver dress and had a look at her reflection in the well before she left. When she saw herself, she was so pleased with what she saw that she almost fell into the well. The service was attended by the prince too. As soon as he caught a glimpse of Cinderella, his heart was captured. He couldn't take his eyes off her. But when the priest raised the sacraments, Cinderella left the church. The prince followed her right away, but the girl vanished into thin air and the prince could see no trace of her anywhere. Back at home, the girl took off her dress. The food was ready because God had prepared it for her. The stepmother came home with her 2 daughters. "You'll never guess what we saw at church. There's no one as beautiful as that girl in the whole wide world." Then they told her what they had seen. "I saw it too." "How come?" "From the mulberry tree." That was all the stepmother needed. She immediately had the mulberry tree cut down. The next Sunday, she mixed the lentils into the ashes and ordered Cinderella to separate the lentils from the ashes, then to cook them and serve them. The 3 women left her alone again. Then God descended with his angels and ordered them to do Cinderella's chores. He told the girl to get ready and do the same as she had done the Sunday before. This time Cinderella donned the golden dress. As she was setting off, she looked in the well and was enchanted by what she saw there. The prince was already expecting her. When the priest raised the sacraments, Cinderella left the mass. She vanished into thin air again. When Cinderella arrived home again, all the food was ready because God had prepared it all. You'll never believe what we saw. I saw it too, from the top of the well. The stepmother had it cut down at once. The third Sunday, the stepmother mixed flour into the ashes for Cinderella to separate. It was God again that did the job for her, and Cinderella donned the diamond dress and went off to Mass. But not without looking in the well first. She couldn't believe her eyes, she was so dazzling. When the priest raised the sacraments, she got up to leave. But the prince had had the threshold of the church covered in glue, so one of her shoes got stuck. The prince picked up the shoe and set off on horseback to look for its owner. At home, the stepmother's two daughters were again boasting of what they had seen. Again, Cinderella told them that she had seen it from the roof of the house. Upon that, the mother had the roof of the house demolished. The prince went through the whole village. He had all the young maidens in every house try on the shoe, but it did not fit any of them. When he reached the stepmother's house, Cinderella was made to hide under the washtub while they waited for the prince. The girls tried on the shoe, but it did not fit either of them, despite their mother having carved bits off their ankles. Then all of a sudden the cockerel began to crow in the yard. The pretty girl is under the washtub. The pretty girl is under the washtub. The stepmother heard this and began to chase the cockerel, but the prince heard it too. The pretty girl was indeed under the washtub. She tried on the shoe, which fitted her perfectly. Then the prince said to Cinderella, "Love of my life, I'm yours and you're mine forever and a day." This time it was the stepmother's two daughters who were left behind. And this is the end of my tale. Hungarian Folk Tales. 7 at 1 blow. Once upon a time, long, long ago, there lived a tanner. Now this tanner had as many children as a sieve has holes, and even more. One day, he was cooking porridge for his children. There was just enough for each to have a drop. It was hot, it was summertime, and a swarm of flies flew in through the window. And this sent the tanner into such a rage that he lifted his hand and brought it down hard on the table. He managed to get 7 of the flies at one and the same time. So he thought to himself, "Am I not a true and gallant knight to hit 7 at one blow?" He made for himself a sign, and on it he wrote, "7 at one blow," and this he wore around his neck. Off he went to seek his way in the world, and eventually he came upon a well deep in the forest. So he lay himself down and slept. Just then came devils to sup from the water. One of these devils saw him and said, "Now this is a true and gallant knight. He's not a man to battle with." No sooner had he said this than the tanner woke up, and then the devil said, "Will you not come and serve us true? Your job will be to carry water in this bison skin." With that they went off to where the devils lived, in the infernal fire or somewhere deep in hell. And the devils drank the water up in a flash. So then the king of the devils said, "What wages do you require?" "A load of gold carried home, and I will ride on top of it." And so the bargain was struck. They passed the man the bison skin. The poor man almost collapsed under the weight of it. He set out for the well, He wondered how he was going to be able to carry it back full when he could hardly manage to carry it when it was empty. So he got hold of a spade, and when he arrived, he started to dig around the well. Now the devils got fed up of waiting for him to come back with the water, so one of them upped and went off after him. Said the devil, "What are you doing, Tanner? I'm not going to come here back and forth and fetch water for you all the time. I'm going to bring the whole well in one go." "No, don't do that. You see, my mother is blind and she's going to fall into the hole. I'll fetch the water for you. You fetch wood from the forest instead." And with this, they started off back. Then the devil led him to the forest to show him how much wood he had to gather up and bring back. The devil took the top of a tree and bent it down, and the tanner held on to it. Then the branch came loose from the devil's hand, and as the tree sprang back, it threw the tanner up and over the forest. Out sprang a rabbit from under the bush, and the tanner chased it. Asked the devil, "Now where are you running?" "After this rabbit, don't you see? I jumped across the forest for it, and I still couldn't catch it." Then the devil ran home and told the others, "Get rid of this tanner, because he's a bigger devil than any of us." The tanner said he wouldn't go away because there was a devil here stronger than him, and he pointed at one of the devils, saying he was the stronger one. And the devil said, "I'm stronger than you. Come with me to the top of the hill. We'll take a whip with us and make it crack. Whoever makes the whip crack louder is surely the stronger of us too." The tanner said, "I don't mind, but give me a club as well." When they got there, the devil said, "You go first at cracking the whip." "And no," said the tanner, "you go first." The devil took the whip and cracked it so hard that the tanner went and fell over. "I wanted to hold the end of the whip, but you were too fast for me." "Now then," said the devil, "it's really your go." "Well, if it's my go, close your eyes, because when I do it, you'll go blind." The devil closed his eyes, and the tanner smacked him right on the head with a club. Then he asked, "Now who can crack the whip harder?" And the devil said, "You can crack it harder. You're a bigger devil than all of us." So they went back, and the devil said to the rest of them, "Take this tanner home right away." So they put the money into a big tub, and he sat on top of it. When he got home, his children came out and said, "Father, Father, how long is it since we last had the meat of a devil?" The devil emptied the tub, money, tanner and all, and ran off back to hell. "It's a good thing that we got rid of him," he told the other devils. "Even his children want to eat the meat of a devil." And that was the full of the story, from its head all the way to its tail. Hungarian Folk Tales. The Magic Lock. Once upon a time, long ago and far away, there lived a poor woman, and she had one son. One day she had to do the washing for someone, and when she got home, she found the place empty. Where could her son have gone? Where could he be? No one could tell her. If only she had known that devils had taken him away. They had carried him off to hell to set him to work for them. When the boy had spent 7 years with them, they assigned him 7 rooms. He had to do everything: sweep them, clean them, dust them up, anything and everything he had to do. Now in the 7th room there was a lock, a magic lock, and in that lock lived 12 devils. He worked and worked on that lock until he eventually stole it. He escaped from those devils and went straight off home to his mother. Now what did he say to his mother? He said, "Mother, go to the king and ask him for his daughter's hand, for I would like to take her as my wife." Off went his mother to the king and asked for his daughter as a bride for her son. The king roared with laughter at the idea of such a lad wanting his daughter in marriage, so he said, "Listen, my dear, I'll give my daughter to your son if during the night he can root up and destroy the forest that surrounds the village. Make it disappear without a trace. That's the only way my daughter will ever be his bride." So the poor woman went home and told her son what the king had said. Well, all the son had to say was, "If that's all that's needed, that's how it will be." When evening fell, he turned the key in the lock, and right away there were 12 devils in front of him. "Off you go, level that forest by morning, so roots and all have gone and nothing remains, not even a fallen acorn." And the devils set to work. Next morning there wasn't a sign or trace of the forest, even the roots had all been pulled up. The lad went to the king to report the task was done, and he had come to claim his daughter. "You can have her if by morning there stands in the forest place a fine field of green corn." Now that was no bother to the lad at all. He had his magic lock which helped him to do it all, and by the morning in place of the forest there was a fine field of bright green corn. Again the lad went to the king and said, "Your Majesty, I have done what you asked." The king looked out and saw the fine corn, but all he said was, "Well indeed, you've done all your tasks. I'll give you one more. By morning lay out a road in front of my palace that is paved with diamonds, with trees at its sides and the trees full of birds. If you succeed in this task, then my daughter shall be yours." The lad went home and in the evening turned the key in the lock, and in the morning in front of the king's palace sparkled a diamond road with flowering trees and the trees full of birds. The king looked out and was almost blinded by the glittering brightness and the beauty of the trees. He couldn't believe his eyes. For that, it was worth giving his daughter's hand. And so it passed. On the following morning, there above the meadow hung a palace from a golden chain, and beautiful it was too. And that is where they lived. One day he went hunting, but he didn't take the lock with him and left it with his wife. She didn't know the value of the rusty old lock because her husband hadn't told her. Now the devils had a companion, and she was an ugly old witch. She happened to come by the palace, crying, "New locks for old! New locks for old!" The king's daughter heard her and was delighted, so she called out that she had one. Now that's just what the old witch wanted. Out she took from her pocket a new lock and exchanged it for the magic lock. Now the palace hanging from the golden chain immediately turned into a tumble-down old shack. The princess cried and cried, but she couldn't imagine how it had happened. When her husband came back, he almost fell over when he saw the tumble-down shack standing where his fine palace should be. His wife wept and told him how she had exchanged the lock for a new one from the old woman. Her husband was consumed by sorrow when he heard this. But he pulled himself together, went to the king, and told him the full and short of it. "Off you go to Mother Moon, who is all of 100 years old, and perhaps she will put things right." Off the lad went to see Mother Moon, who was all of 100 years old. But Mother Moon couldn't do anything about it. She just gave him a dog and sent him to Mother Sun, who was all of 200 years old. Off he went to her, but she just gave him a mouse and sent him on to Mother Wind, who was all of 300 years old. He told her why he had come, and she gave him a cat, and told him that there on an island in the middle of the deep blue sea lived an old witch, and it was she who had the lock. Wasn't he the happiest man there was? He did what he was told and went off to where Mother Wind told him to go. His way to the island wasn't easy, what with the mouse and the cat and the dog, but once they were there, it took the three animals no time at all to bring him the lock. When they got home, the young husband of the king's daughter turned the key in the lock, and straight away the palace was hanging there in its old place from a golden chain. The young pair were so happy, and they lived happily ever after. Hungarian Folk Tales. Terushka. Once upon a time, there lived a widower who had 2 daughters. His next-door neighbour was a widow who never stopped recommending herself to the man. "Hey, neighbour, take me for your wife. You won't regret it. I will bring up your 2 daughters, and I'll be like a real mother to them." One day, the poor man finally gave in and married the widow next door. But it did not take long for the woman to start treating the girls badly. She tried everything to get them away from the house. She nagged her husband, "Take them both to the forest and just leave them there. Let them perish." That was something horrible for the father's ears, but still, he did as the woman wanted him to. Terushka, that was the name of the elder girl, heard what her father and stepmother were about to do. So she filled her pockets with grain, so she would leave a trail behind. Early next morning, the father took out his 2 daughters. Terushka just kept spilling the grain from her pockets all along the way. When they were deep in the middle of the forest, their father told them, "Well, my girls, I think it's about time to take a rest, because we are all very tired." And the girls went to sleep. When the girls woke up, they started calling their father, but he was already far, far away. "Don't you worry, little sister. We will trace our way back along the grain that I spilled as we came this way." But they couldn't find the grain because the birds had pecked it all up, and the girls just couldn't find their way home. On top of all of that, their stepmother had cursed them before they left. "If you drink from the track of an animal, you are going to change into that animal." As they were walking in the endless forest, the younger girl became thirsty. She spotted the footprint of a cow that was full of clean water. "Sister, oh dear sister, I'm so thirsty, I have to drink." "Don't drink, sister, because you will turn into an animal." A little later, the little girl got left behind and she drank from the footprint of a deer. When Terushka looked back, she saw the little deer running after her. Terushka kept on going forward with the deer following her until she finally found a hollow tree. There she gathered up some dry leaves and made a comfortable bed. One day a young prince was hunting in the forest and he spotted the beautiful Terushka. The prince called after them, "Come on out, you beautiful girl." "I cannot, because I have a dear sister and you want to kill her." "Come on out with the deer. I won't touch her." So Terushka finally came out, and she was so beautiful that the prince was lost for words. When he found his voice again, he immediately asked her to marry him. "Let's get married. I'll be yours and you'll be mine, and we'll live happily forever and a day." He kissed her and embraced her. Then they both got on his horse, and the prince married the girl. Time passed by. The king was on a hunt one day when Terushka gave birth to a son. His name was Little King Andriku. Before I forget what I was going to say, I wanted to tell you that there lived a mean cook in the court who had an ugly daughter. She had always dreamt that her own daughter would be the queen one day, so it was no surprise that she hated Terushka. "Your Majesty, you are so beautiful. There is a pond in the garden. You should go and take a look at yourself." When they walked around the water, the cook suddenly shoved her into the pond. When this was done, the cookwoman quickly changed her own daughter's dress and made her lay down in Terushka's bed. Soon the king returned from the hunt. The evil cook told him the good news. "You have a son. His name is Little King Andriku. "Just take a look, Your Majesty." The king was very happy and he kissed the baby boy. He was about to kiss his wife, but he was horrified at what he saw. "Oh my goodness, what became of my wife? How could she become as ugly as this?" "It was childbirth that did it to her," explained the cook. The king was sad, but since there was nothing he could do, he finally accepted the change. Each night, Terushka came back and visited the deer in her room. She kept asking, "Is little King Andrico crying?" "Of course he is, dear sister. Barren women have no milk." One day the cook's daughter heard this. She was determined to get rid of the deer before it caused her downfall. So she said to the king, "Darling husband, I'm feeling very weak. I will feel no better until I can eat the heart and liver of this little deer." The deer must be killed. As they were sharpening the knife and washing the bowl for her blood, the deer ran out to the pond and called out, "My darling Terushka, get up from the depths, from the stomach of the big fish, because they want to cut my throat with a knife. They want to catch my blood in a bowl. They want to kill me too." Then Terushka stepped out of the pond, walked up to the deer, and stroked her gently. She was even more beautiful than before. The king heard and saw everything because he was secretly following the deer. He embraced and kissed Terushka, who told him everything. The king immediately went to see the cook. He said to the cook, "What would you do to the person who would not hesitate to destroy my wife?" "What? I would have the person tied to a horse's tail and have him dragged through the town." And the old woman and her daughter were treated exactly as the old hag had predicted. The king took Terushka and the little deer back to the palace, and they all lived happily ever after.